A very good evening, everyone. Welcome to the African Young Leaders Foundation Youth Dialogue Series for this week. And as usual, my name is Mary Joyce Takali, the Executive Deputy Secretary of African Young Leaders Foundation. It's a pleasure to always have you follow us every Sunday or every after 2 weeks. And I'm very honored to have three amazing speakers in the room. But before they go ahead to introduce themselves, allow me to let you know that our theme today is very exciting, and it's like a continuation of last Sunday's theme that we had about accountability, how young people can be accountable in their specific places or various spaces where they occupy. Today's theme is power, pressure, and principles, staying ethical in leadership when it's hard. We all know that young people are taking up spaces. It might be in business, it might be in communities, it might be in activism, and everywhere they are taking up spaces. But we know that with power comes pressure, and sometimes pressure comes in form of compromise. Sometimes there's pressure to fit in, sometimes there's pressure to survive, and sometimes it's pressure to survive, to succeed at any cost. So tonight, we are not talking about leadership as an easy thing. We want to be able to find out how do we stay honest even when dishonest pays faster? How do we stay principled even when silence looks safer? So we are joined by three amazing speakers who are going to introduce themselves and share their wisdom. And in no particular order, allow me to welcome the speakers to say a word, introduce themselves, tell us about themselves and what they do and which countries they come from. We have Esther Bonyonga from Malawi. Please forgive me if I don't pronounce your name well. Kindly unmute and speak to us and tell us what you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. You pronounced my name perfectly. It's Esther Bonyonga. So, yes, I'm Esther Bonyonga. I'm from Malawi. I'm a women activist. I founded an organization called Ladies in Tertiary Education, work with young women institutions. Apart from that, I am also the chairperson of the Young and Feminist Movement in Malawi. I am also a Southern Region leader of Young Women of Africa. I'm so excited to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Esther. We can't wait to hear from what you brought for us from Malawi, and it's a pleasure to have you tonight. And from South Africa, we have Mr. Wiseman Dube. Please kindly unmute and introduce yourself.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Yes, my name is Wiseman Dube, and I'm based here in South Africa. It's quite an honor, to be given an opportunity to engage in such an amazing thought-provoking dialogue. What I do is I'm a youth peace and security researcher, master in political sciences as well. And I recently also opened a foundation, a mentorship program that is called Young Men Can Mentorship Program, where basically I help, young people and basically young boys and girls. So basically that's who I am, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dube. Your network was not very, very good. I think you would need to do something about it, but it's a pleasure to have you here, and you are very most welcome because I've been following your work on LinkedIn and it's very commendable. We can't wait to hear you share your wisdom tonight. So from Rwanda, we have Miss Jiramata Anita. And Miss Jiramata, can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jiramata Anita. As you said, I am from Rwanda. I am an educator. and education researcher. I'm also a youth leader and advocate, and I am the CEO of Jiramata Foundation. I'm currently pursuing my master's degree in educational planning and management. Yeah, and I'm very pleased to be here and present tonight. I can't wait to hear from you and learn more from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jiramata. You're very welcome. We can't wait to hear from you, and thank you so much for accepting to join us today. Now, like I mentioned earlier, our theme is power, pressure, and principles. Staying ethical in leadership when it's hard. As I also mentioned earlier, we have seen young people joining spaces, but with power comes different things. And I would like to start with you, Miss Esther Bonyonga, to tell us that because we want to bring this theme into perspective, but in a personal story kind of way. Like when you hear the word, when you hear power, pressure, and principles, what real situation in your life or leadership career does this theme immediately remind you of?
All right. So for me, when I hear these three words, I'm taking them differently. So looking at power, immediately I'm thinking about my leadership roles, the roles that I call it, because I'm a leader and have been a leader for some time. So I'm thinking of the leadership roles that have been in the past years, and then the leadership roles that I am now. So, for instance, right now I'm thinking of as a director of Laite, and also I'm thinking of, okay, as the chairperson of the Young Feminist Movement. So it comes with the responsibility that I have and the influence. So that's power. When it comes to pressure, I am then thinking of what I say yes to. Sometimes as leaders, you, with the opportunities that are coming, with your work, you are pressured to, sometimes you get to say yes to things that are not supposed to be said yes to things that are ethical. So as a leader, you need to think of, okay, this is what I stand for. This is, I can say yes to this. I For this one, I can't say, this one I'm going to say no, because with uh, with my principles, it's not really aligned with my principles, or it's not ethical. When I look at, and then looking at my principles, so when one is talking about principles, you're talking about what you stand for. Every leader has things they stand for. So for me, for example, I stand for women's rights, youth inclusion, and transparency. So you, as a leader, you sit down to say, okay, what do I stand for? All right. So in combining these three, I would say that in my leadership, I look at the influence that I have, and at the same time, the pressure that I am facing. Because to be honest, as a leader, sometimes you're tempted to take the easy path, of which it's not supposed to be like that. You need to look at the bigger picture. You need to make sure that you are not compromising fairness. So that's what I can say about this. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And from what I take from your submission is that power is leadership positions that we have, and pressure is what we say yes to, and then principles is what we stand for. So it's really amazing to get to know and put our theme into perspective, because most times, like I said, this conversation today is a continuation of the conversation that we had 2 weeks before about accountability. But we often think of accountability, or if we say, in this instance, if we say corruption, we think it starts with millions. But then research and experience shows that it starts with small favors. That time we talked about how you go to school with 1 pen and then you come back with 10 pens, or you go to school without a pen and then you come back with even more than what you went to school with. So we usually think that it starts with millions, but it starts with small favors. It starts with those small things that we usually underlook. And with that in mind, we want to understand, I'm still with you, Miss Esther, what kind of pressure do young leaders face today that makes ethical leadership difficult in our society? if I may repeat the question, it is what kind of pressure do young leaders face today that makes ethical leadership especially difficult in our society?
All right. Thank you so much for that question. There's a lot of pressure when it comes to us leaders. So I'm also even including myself because I'm still a leader. So number one pressure, I would say, yeah, obviously peer pressure. We attempted to take shortcuts. You look at your friends, they're doing better than you. And then because you're a leader and you have certain opportunities. I'll give an example. You have opportunities to, funds, you have opportunities to influence. And so because of the peer pressure that is out there, you're looking at your friends, they're driving good cars, they live in better houses. So the peer pressure to say, okay, I think I can, I can find my way into these funds and then get some money and get a better car for myself. So number one, peer pressure. Two, resource pressure. Again, the misuse of funds and opportunities. We also have the political pressure, because whether we like it or not, as leaders, we're also political in what we do, political or organizational pressure. The other pressure is social media pressure. As young leaders nowadays, we are encouraged to be putting ourselves out there. So sometimes we are carried away to say, oh, I should always look like, things are working for me because I've been a leader for some time. So there's that type of pressure that would really tempt us to take shortcuts for recognition or results. But looking at this, ethical leadership really does ask us to prioritize what is right over what is easy. So I think that's what I can say about the pressures that we face as young leaders.
Okay. What is right over what is easy? That's what usually young people often prefer to take. Thank you for grounding us in real life, about real life. And we want to first move away from real life or personal life and go to systems. Most times, even the best people work in broken systems or broken structures. So we want to hear from the gentleman in the room. I hope that your network is a bit better now. Want to think about institutions like police, like universities, like government offices, or even other offices, companies. And when we usually see these things, that systems often reward loyalty over truth. Usually it often rewards silence over courage, connections over competence. So we see these things many times in our daily life and in Africa. I'd like to come to you, Mr. Dube, if you're able to speak, and what we would like to hear from you and get to know, how do power and pressure in our institutions today test the principles of young leaders trying to do the right thing?
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me now. I hope my
Yes,
network
please.
is okay. So basically, before we even unpack everything, I think we have to understand that there is this connection between institutions and as well young people. And it comes from the fact that as young people, we find ourselves getting into institutions or getting into organizations or getting into whatever structures that we might think of. And we get there, basically as from a vulnerable perspective, right? We get there and we put ourselves on an already existing template of that particular institution or of that particular organization, for example. Now, also, in that particular institution and organization, there have been principles that are put in place that at the moment we might not be, familiar with, up until we get ourselves into the groove of the system. So we unpack these as we go on. But now the problem is these institutions, they have their own identities, whether how they exercise power, it might be different, and also how they exercise perhaps and how they carry out their principles, it also might be different. So we're coming in as young people, as people who basically don't know anything, and we want to understand what's happening. Now, when you get there, then that's where you find out that some institutions, for example, there's this tug of war between who we are in our principles as young people and also the standards of the particular institution. So then now you get scenarios where, for instance, in an institution, then there is old folks game where the people say that, no, I'm the old folk, I've been in the institution for so long, so this is how we operate. We operate 1, 2, 3. Then as a young person, that's not how you operate. Then you find yourself in a compromising position of your principles because they're telling you that in this, I've been here for 20 years, so I know how things operate here. But you're a new person, you're a young person, you are there to seek the opportunity, you're there to seek the growth. Then they tell you that, for instance, in this organization, you don't do any auditing of the organization. What we do is just we do things in an informal way. So then that's why you get the scenarios where now, there's this altercation of institutions and the principles of young people. So it's a very difficult thing, for young people to handle in a way. So it is quite a challenging thing. And also remember that in an institution where you get in, there are people already in positions of power, right? And power also speaks on the idea of influencing. Are you able to influence? So, and also when there are people in positions of power is very addictive, right? Power is very addictive by nature. So the more people that follow you, then the more powerful you become. So now if you get any young person who is fresh, young person who has never been tainted before, young person that has never had this experience before, then you as an old folk in the game, you're able to alter the young person's mind, therefore perpetuating the power that you have in that particular context. So it's all those dynamics that I think we have to pay attention to, and I think my sister earlier alluded on pressure as well, that, it is basically, it comes from our experience with other people as well, but I would also like to add and say that sometimes when you think of pressure in the context of an institution, or context of an organization, you also find that we have these external forces that institution might convey to young people, that sometimes they can alter behaviors, sometimes they can alter ideals, sometimes they can alter belief systems positively or negatively. The problem then comes now on the idea of principles, is because when you gave me the topic, I thought of principles as this guiding ideas that keep you firm regardless of any context that you are in. So as a young person, you're getting into these organizations, how then do you not succumb to the pressures of the old folk game? I've been in the game for long. Or how do you now not succumb to the principles that are there in the structures that are there already existing in that particular organization? There's always that dynamic that is affecting young people a lot, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Dube, for those wonderful words. It's really intriguing to see that we see good people, but then the systems, because they find broken systems, the systems break them and they become like them and they start compromising. Because most times it comes in form of, like, when someone is offered a job and then the people you find there, someone quietly tells you, change this detail, no one will notice. And that is usually the beginning of compromise. You find the systems and then you bow to the systems. So it makes me wonder if is corruption about bad people or bad systems? And with that in mind, I'm still with you, Mr. Dube. I would like to hear from you. Do you think corruption is mostly a personal failure or a system that pushes people into unethical choices, and why?
Okay, that's actually another interesting question. Just to take you back a little bit on our biological makeup as human beings, so that you can at least maybe have a clear picture of how do I arrive to a premise of saying that it is both, an institutional, identity, and is also a personal identity as well. So now, what you have to understand is that as human beings, we basically have what we call reciprocal altruism ingrained in who we are. So basically, when we meet people, we are wired biologically and naturally to always, opt for exchange. It is who we are. And if I remember correctly, there's the book that is written by Francis Fukuyama, Political Development and Political Order, and it speaks on the idea of that before we can even blame the institutions, we basically, in our own nature, we favor, we actually exchange favors, whether with people that we know, which basically people call it kin selection, or sometimes they call it, nepotism and all that. But sometimes it doesn't have to do with the people that you know. Sometimes you have to do with the people that you don't know. So we're wired in that way. Now, on the institutional side of it, every institution that is built on a foundation that does not apply principles that are against corruption, for instance, it is bound to make corruption strive in a way. So every foundation of any institution is supposed to be grounded in those core ideas of transparency, accountability, and that. But if an institution doesn't have those pillars, it becomes difficult for it then to fight this idea of corruption. Now, then you get people who are wired biologically to favor others. In an institution that doesn't have the foundation again, that is against corruption. Then so you have these two things combining. Then it means the corruption that we're going to face, then it becomes a complement of both the personal failure and of both the systematic failure of it. So it's all these patronage relationships that we get, and all these reciprocal exchanges that we get, from individuals, even people with power and all that. So it's always like that as human beings, that we operate in those institutions. So then it goes now that now we want to check out our ethical choices or ethical decisions that we want to take. It becomes difficult to basically tackle your biological, makeup of reciprocal altruism. At the same time, we are also, in an institution that is not grounded in that particular principle. So it becomes a bit of this tension that you would want to say. I remember there's a book that is written also by Robert Sharma, where he talks about leadership. There's a quote that it says that every time you avoid doing the right thing, you feel the habit of doing wrong. So now, because you have this institution that does not have the right things to do from the word go, or does not encourage the right things from where to go, it becomes difficult for you to even do the right thing as an individual. So I guess it's all a combination of your biological makeup, of that you receive reciprocal altruism, and you also expect. In fact, the funny part with corruption is that it is not a negotiated expectation of returning of favors. It's actually a natural thing. I can remember maybe an instance where someone can say, no, but I gave you 10 rand this other day. And at that time, you maybe never tell them that you want the 10 rand back. But initially in yourself, you feel this urge of just giving them the 10 rand back, or at least maybe putting also another 10 rand becomes 20 rand, naturally so. Then you find out this biological make-up or relationship or biological perpetuation of these corrupt tendencies that we have. In fact, you even highlighted of this thing of having one pen, then you go and then you have another, 10 pens. At that time, it's not even a calculated decision. Perhaps let's say you borrowed someone a pen. Somehow, this person is going to feel the edge of even returning the pens to you in a more nicer way. Then you feel fulfilled. So I think it is a combination of weak, institutions that don't have the foundational aspect to tackle corruption. But at the same time, we should really cater for our biological makeup of this reciprocal altruism that we have, that we can at least maybe understand that we can take proper decisions on fighting corruption or having ethical choices. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dupe, for that wonderful submission. And from what I take from you are saying that it is both a personal failure and it's a systematic failure. And as young people, I think it is up to us to do the right thing, even when nobody is watching, and that is integrity. And integrity is expensive at first, but it is very cheap in the long run. And speaking of integrity, I would like to come to you, Ms. Giramata, because we see young people most times asking themselves, how do I survive? Do I survive or do I stay honest? So you're usually at crossroads between being honest and then surviving or succeeding in life. And I would like to ask you to tell or help our viewers know, what does staying ethical really mean when power and pressure are both working against you?
Thank you very much. To me, staying ethical means remaining true to yourself, to your values, even when the situation makes it very easier for you, or even when you're not being watched by anyone. Let's say, imagine being offered a promotion or an opportunity because someone wants to favor you, even though when you know someone deserves it more. Imagine being asked to overlook a mistake in order to protect like a friend or your position. In such moments, the temptation to take the easiest route is high. But ethical leadership is not about convenience. It is about character. For me, staying ethical means asking myself one question before like every major decision. Well, I just like to ask myself these questions, which is, if I take this decision, or what if this decision becomes public? Will I still be proud of myself? Yeah, then through that, I get to know if I'm staying ethical or if I'm not. And yeah, that's how I know that staying ethical really means being true to myself and myself values and everything about me. Yeah, thank you. I
Thank you
don't know
so
if I have answered your question very well.
Yes. We get that you are saying that staying ethical is not about taking or doing what is convenient for you, but it's about the character and what you want to put out there or what you want to be known for. But let's be honest, leadership is not an easy thing. It sounds glamorous, but it's very hard because you have to make tough choices, and we've seen many people losing whatever they have just because they had to do the right thing. And we know that being integrous comes with a lot of costs, and staying to your principles comes with a lot of costs. So I'm still with you, Miss Jiramata, and I want you to tell us what personal values should never be negotiable for a young leader, no matter what the situation.
Thank you. For me, there are like 4 values that should never be negotiable, no matter the situation. I would say the first one is honest, because trust is the foundation of leadership. So people will follow you if they believe what you say is true. The second one would be accountability. Just owning your decisions and actions, whether they lead to success or failure. The third one is fairness, which is treating people based on merit, not favoritism or connections or convenience. Last one is the strength to stand for what is right, even when it means standing alone. So global leadership research, including these insights from World Economic Forum, they've showed that trust and integrity are among the most critical leadership qualities today. So if a leader changed their values depending on the situation, people notice that. And confidence in that leader quickly erodes. But when your values remain consistent, your credibility grows, which means people respect you not just for what you can do, but for who you are. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Anita. You said that for young people, the personal values that they should cultivate, no matter what cost, is honesty, accountability, and then standing for what is right, even when it means standing alone. Now, moving away from personal values, we would like to hear a bit about structural values or structural habits that young people can cultivate. Mr. Dube would like to know what structures or habits can young leaders build to protect their integrity before they gain power?
Okay, at least the nice thing about the question is that the starting point is correct in that what do young people actually inherently are putting in place, the structures, because it's about them end of the day. As I actually alluded earlier, that we are coming into the institutions, we are the ones who are coming into the corporations, we are the ones who are coming into the organizations. So we have to make sure that our game is already we have to make sure that our standard is already set. But now, in terms of the structures that they can, build to protect their integrity before they gain power, the fact that you're also saying before they gain power, that's very important, because before you get something, it's also going to be different on how it is going to be after that. And also the process is very interesting as well. So now already, if you have clear values as a young person, of who you want, who you are and what you want, it's going to be easier for you that when you get into the corporation or the organization, you already know what you want. I think also there's a point that I said earlier, that the problem is that we start from a vulnerable position of like, we want to be in these spaces. For instance, I want to be employed in this particular company, all right? But have I checked that, the company aligns to my values? Have I checked that actually the structures in the company or in the organization align with who I am and what values I have? So I think the first thing is just, as a young person, you're supposed to know your values, have your clear values. The second structure or the habit that you can have as a young person is this idea of having accountability partners and networks. Even outside the professional spaces, but have somewhere or someone that you can account to. That on its own can give you a little bit of check of, are you in the right track or are you in the wrong track? Because it's going to help you when now you get power. The reason why most of the times we misuse power, or leaders that we know misuse power, is because they always find it difficult to be checked upon. Are you still in the right track? Are you still doing well? Someone who can go and account to, or someone who can come to you and say, you know what, in this point you didn't do A, in this point you didn't do B. What steps can we take, going forward? So I think having accountability partners and networks, it helps. If you don't have, let's say, get into corporation, find someone who aligns with your values and your principles. This is what I usually do. Sometimes when I get to conferences and stuff, I assess the people that are there, and I see who in amongst the group that I can actually relate to even easier. Then I can tell them my story. They tell me their story. We create this, strategic connection that they can even assess my progress later on in life. That, are you still okay? So I think we should have accountability partners and networks. Then also, I think one of the things is also mentorship is very important. Mentorship is very important even before you gain power, because your mentors, they guide you throughout all the steps of the way, even after you get the power. So I think it's important that you have this habit or this structure of basically having a mentor who can guide you. And importantly, your mentor is supposed to be someone who's very experienced in that particular field. It doesn't make sense that you are in position of power. For instance, you are a leader of a certain organization, but your mentor is someone, maybe your friend who's sitting with you every day, maybe on the street. It won't work because it won't align. So I think one of the things that we should do as young people is to find mentors who are experienced in the field that we want, and they can always guide us of where we are going and how the process as well. Then I think also another thing that is very important is this idea of transparency. And I'm not talking about transparency in the fact that sometimes you just have to be open about decisions and actions that you want, but make it structural, that is consistent, right? There's consistent feedback that you always give, to your mentors, always give to your accountability partners or networks, and you always give a written report, if that is possible, to say, I've done this, and I think this has affected this point, and it has affected this principle of mine. The problem with transparency is that we shy away. So now if we want to make a meaningful change, but we shy away of being open to everything that we did. For instance, we talked earlier about corruption. For you to be, to be transparent, that on that day I actually took 50% of the money and I chowed it, or I did something that was not particular to the goal. we won't do that. We always find excuses, So it is important that we always be transparent in a way that is even written down. Write down the actions and then you give it to your accountability partners or give it to your mentors. And then I think also we're supposed to have decision frameworks. They're very important in that they always guide, and we're able to say no. I think people always shy away also to say no. It's always a difficult thing to say no. So even if you're in the leadership position, because remember, we're talking about influence, as you alluded earlier. You're talking about this idea of influence. You want to influence, you want to get power, you want to basically be the one who's pressurizing people, or the other way around, you're the one who's being pressurized. But are you able to say no? Have you written down, the decision frameworks that work for you as a person to say, okay, with me, I'm gonna say no on this, and I'm gonna say yes on this. So I think we have that. Then the last thing I think that we should also notice introspection. As I said earlier that okay, it's good to be accountable to partners and networks. It's also good to be accountable to someone who's experienced. But at the same time, I think it's important that we should have introspection. Introspection basically, so one could argue that it means that yes, you can be accountable to yourself. Going back to the drawing board as a person to yourself and say, okay, before I gain power, I wanted to do ABC. But now that I have got power, have I done the ABC that I actually had affirmed personally, in whatever spaces that you were. So I think if we have the proper decision frameworks, if we have transparency that is structured, if we have mentorship that is consistent every now and then, and if we can have accountability partners, and lastly and most importantly, if we can have clear values, I think that can protect our integrity. Yeah.
From your words, if we are to have habits and structures to help us cultivate accountability as young people, if we are in places of power, I take it that you said accountability partners, mentorship is key, transparency, introspection, just to mention, but a few I will not repeat. So now, as the conversation is going on, we are talking power, we are talking pressure, we are talking principles, and we've seen how we can stay integrous. We've seen personal values. We've had know when to say no and what to say no to. I would like to come to you, Miss Esther. We are coming back to you with the personal bit of it, and we want to know that. Can you really describe the situation that happened to you when doing the right thing made you unpopular or made you isolated? Please tell us that story.
Right. Thank you so much, Mary. Yes, I have personal experiences in that. I'll give an example. The recent one that was last year, where it was among one of the partners, and I was approached to say, okay, you work with young women in tertiary institutions, but then the suggested project that we were supposed to partner on was literally not in line with what we do. And it was not in line with, there was literally nothing in common. And looking at the money, and as a young leader, you also have to be considered. You are looking at the money, and how funding is crazy nowadays. I would not say it was easy, but I had to decline that the partnership. And actually, some of my friends were like, "Hey, if you are going to decline this," before I came to actually communicate to them, and I was actually telling my friends that I'm no, it's literally not in line with what we do. And then the person said, hey, with the funding, are you sure? But then I had to stand my ground to say, no, this is literally not in line with what we do. It's not in line with what I do. So in that reign, we lost that partner completely, really, because we said no to that particular project. But for me, it gave me peace because, again, when you are, I'm advocating for young women's rights, and we're having this project, but then there's no peace within me. Like, for me, it really doesn't make sense. I also give an example where you know how as young people we're very excited about travels, we're excited about, the networking that goes out there. And I even remember it was a country that I've never been in. It's one of the countries that I really look forward to go to for a conference, for a meeting. And yes, I had that opportunity, but again, it was not in line with my principles. It was not in line with the type of advocacy that I do. So again, I declined that and I got to lost that type of recognition, because if you go through that type of space, you're also recognized. So yeah, I've been in a position where I lost partnerships and also some of the recognition. But for me, I don't regret, because again, as a leader, like Mr. Dube was saying, to say if it's not in line with what you do, you need to just, let it go. It's okay to say no. So yes, I lost these opportunities, but like there's peace in my heart to say, this is not what I stand for. I'm going to focus on what I stand for. If opportunities come with what I stand for, it's okay. I'll go for it. Yeah. So that's my personal experience. Thank you.
That's amazing to hear. I know, and like I said earlier, many of us have lost opportunities just because we have always wanted to do the right thing and what is in line with what we feel comfortable with. How about you, Miss Anita? You talked about how ethical leadership is not about convenience, or that it's about character. Have you ever lost an opportunity just because you chose principles over convenience? Tell us your story. We would like to hear it.
Yes, that happened before, and I tried to sit with myself, talked to myself, and I wanted to be true to myself and discover what I really wanted. So after that, I decided to stay true and consistent to my values. No matter what, no matter what happened, no matter what was happening. And yeah, I lost so many things, like in my career. Like some of the people used to tell me, you have to give up on this. You have to stop being strict to the values and whatever that you are saying. But yeah, once you know what matters to you, once you know what you are striving for, then it's easier for you to decide.
Wow, thank you so much for giving us your personal story. We really appreciate. And Mr. Dube, I'm not going to ask you the same question, but I would like to come to you with something, because usually where there is power, there is pressure, like how our theme is saying. And with pressure comes silence. Sometimes we keep quiet just because of pressure and will not say anything about things that happen. I mean, history teaches us one thing. We've seen apartheid happened in silence, genocides happened in silence, abuse continues to happen in silence. So, in with that in mind, do you think that silence in the face of wrongdoing is a form of unethical leadership? Why or why not?
Okay, now another thought-provoking question, I think very important. It's always difficult to say things out, right? Especially if your life is at stake or your life is on the line. And just to tie all the argument that I shared earlier, that one of the things that affects us as young people is this idea of coming into organizations or institutions from a vulnerable perspective. I need the job, so I'll just keep my head down and just do what I have to do. And then you see an instance or a scenario where it compromises who you are, and then you keep quiet about it. If you're a true leader, and you have set your values and you have your frameworks in check and you have your accountability partners in check, you would definitely have to say something about it. Also, Robert Sharma says something interesting in his book on leadership as well. He says that leadership cares less rather about appearing right than doing right. You might be quiet and you appear right, it's okay. You know, just because you're quiet, someone will say, no, he's doing the right thing. He's actually appearing right. Pardon me on that one. But then are you actually doing the right thing? So as a leader, that is why these conversations are very important, and such even leadership seminars are important for young people, because that's where now we check what kind of leader are you and what is leadership in essence. Because already because you're a leader, you know, it means you have to take the right decisions, right? It's about making the right decision regardless of any context, even if it means you have to say things out, right? You have to say things out. So therefore, if that is the case, even if you know it doesn't serve you, but as long as it's the right thing, then you're supposed to say it out. So then it is, if you're silent rather, then it means you're doing an unethical thing in terms of your leadership. So you rather speak out, because speaking out then becomes an ethical, identity of leadership. Then leadership also has to do with responsibility. Responsibility doesn't only have to do with actions, right? Sometimes it has to do with just speaking out and correcting, and then this instance you're supposed to do this, but you're not supposed to take that money, or you're not supposed to audit this document like this. It's about saying all these legal things out. So it's very important that we say things out, and it is silence in essence, it is an unethical thing to do, right? So speaking out, it is an ethical thing to do. Then just to close off as well, the problem that we have now, which is I find also fascinating, is that we have legalized silence. In terms of if you are silent, for instance, if let's say you get a scenario at work and then there's an unethical thing that happened, now you can't say it out. The person is going to tell you that, no, this is my own private thing. Don't get involved in my things. Then now in South Africa, there is things such as POPI Act, where they say that it's my protection of information and all those kind of personal information. It doesn't have to do only with the documentation thing, your name and your surnames and all that. Sometimes it has to do with the actions that you see. Because a person can tell you at workplace that, no, that doesn't involve you. What are you going to do in that instance? So we've legalized that thing. Or someone can tell you that you've infringed on my privacy by you saying things out. So it's already that idea of, are you going to choose then where you fit in as a leader? Are you going to be silent, or are you going to speak out? And remember, leadership also has to do with actually speaking things out and doing things out. It's about having this, it's about you being this reference point. So imagine if you have followers then, where you're just you're keeping quiet as a leader. What kind of influence are you going to get then if that is the case? So I think yes, you have to find a balance there, and perhaps of saying, am I supposed to say this now, or am I not supposed to say this now? In fact, just to close off, just also remember this other interesting thought is that maybe leadership also has to do with intelligence, right? Intelligence. When are you supposed to be silent, and when are you supposed to speak out? Let's say that you observe a thing. Are you going to keep quiet at the moment, perhaps then call the colleague later on and speak out in an environment where it's conducive for them? So you're supposed to find a balance as a leader. When are you supposed to be silent, and when are you going to speak out? A food for thought for you as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dube, for that food for thought. Really, really, it's a food for thought for me, because I had a conversation with someone last week, and someone was busy warning me and telling me, if you have witnessed crime, make sure you keep quiet, because when the police know that you are witness, they are going to question you and you'll end up behind bars. So it's really that something that I have to ponder on, whether to do the right thing or keep quiet because you are fearing. And it's really, really amazing to hear that we have legalized silence. Silence may feel neutral at a point, but it favors the wrong side most times. So it's about doing the right thing and making the right decisions and making that balance like you told us. So thank you so much.
Definitely. Yeah.
Ms. Jiramata, I'd like to come to you with your last question for tonight. And I'd like to ask, if you had to give us one rule for surviving leadership without losing our principles, because we realize it's hard. Leadership is a hard thing to do when it comes to making decisions. So if you had to give us that one rule for us to survive without losing our principles, what would it be?
Thank you very much. My one rule is very simple. It is to decide your values before you gain power. Because once power comes, then expectations increase, pressure increases, temptation increases, And if your values are not already clear and strong, it becomes easy to justify small compromises. And small compromises, often lead to bigger ones. So to protect your integrity, young readers, please, you should surround yourself with ethical people. You should be transparent in your decisions. You should speak up earlier when something is wrong. And learn to say no when necessary. Remember, integrity is much easier to protect than to rebuild once it is broken. So true leadership is not measured by how many people follow you or how many people are there with you, but it is measured with the values you refuse to abandon. So as a conclusion, I would love to tell every young leader today, or maybe tomorrow, or anyone who is going to follow this dialogue of today, to build their values before the pressure comes. And they should be courageous, be fair, and be honest, even when it is difficult, because leadership without integrity is just a title. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jiramata, for those wonderful words. You said that we should be able to decide our values before we gain the power so that we don't lose them. And speaking about defining our values before we gain the power, Miss Esther, as I come to you with the last question, what is that one decision every young leader should make early to avoid being corrupted later?
All right. Thank you so much. I think these questions are pretty much similar, so the answers will be similar as well. So I believe that every young leader should make a conscious decision early on defining their principles and committing to them. Okay, so as a young leader, if you're saying my principles are, say, transparency, accountability, or ethical standards, you need to commit to them. You need to tell yourself as a leader, this is what I commit in doing. Because when you do this early, trust me, when these shortcuts come in, when these pressures come in, we've talked about the resource pressure to say, okay, as a leader, you are able to access to funds, you're able to access to opportunities. When these pressures come in, because you already have some of these principles, it's easy for you to say no. But if you don't have these principles early in your leadership journey, then it's also very easy for you to compromise, and then you realize late that I was not supposed to say yes to this thing, and you have that guilt, or say it might do something on your reputation, and it will not look good for you. Because again, we also need to remember that as a leader, you also have followers. So your followers look at what the things you're doing. It seems you're taking shortcuts. It seems then they get to shy away. Actually, you confuse them. And also, to them, it means you're a bad leader. For me, I've heard stories about leaders. I've had leaders that I look up to, and then they end up, in some mess, and they are all over. It really doesn't get a good picture. So, for me, what I saw was that they did not define their principles early, and they did not stick to them. They did not commit to anything. So, as a young leader, make sure you know your values and principles and commit to them. Please underline commit. Because if you don't make any commitment, again, when you face these things, when things come your way, you are not able to, it'll be difficult for you to say no. So I think that's what every young leader should do, to make sure that, you know, there's that integrity, there's that fairness, and also being accountable. I think this has been talked to I think my colleagues have already said this. Also, what I would also like to add is on your mentors, the people you surround yourself with. As a young leader, you also have, other friends who are young leaders. Dube talked about your accountability partner. They also help. They will remind you to say, sister, this is not what you commit to. You're always talking about transparency, accountability. What you're doing, what you're about to do is not right. They'll keep you in check. So I think that is also very important, because in this journey, you're not alone. You have friends, you have followers. There are also other people you get to look up to. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miss Esther, for answering your last question. And in that same spirit, kindly give your last words or call to action as we conclude the dialogue.
All right. For me, I would say, leadership is fun when you're doing the right thing. If you're going to compromise, taking shortcuts, it will not help you. With my experience being a leader, because for me, I've been a leader for almost 10 years. No, this is going to be my 11th year. I have also seen other leaders. We had incredible leaders, and what I've seen, the problem, I think the big problem is the issue of shortcuts, the issue of I should get more resources, the issue of I should be out there, everyone should recognize me. It's fun, the issue of spotlight, and you get to see them compromising in weird ways, and it doesn't look good. You need to also have a good reputation. It destroys your reputation. So what I would advise my fellow young leaders to do is to really make sure that they stand on their principles and values, making sure you're doing your right thing, because reputation, I would say, is also everything, in this leadership journey. So I think that's what I can conclude. And I would say the other thing that I want to add is that I'd say I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've also learned from the other speakers. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Miss Esther Bonyonga from Malawi. And may we hear from you, Miss Anita, with your last words and maybe call to action.
Thank you very much. As Esther said, I would love to tell young readers to be honest with everything that they do, and they should be courageous. Yeah, that's it. It's hard to speak after Esther, but yeah, she has said what I was supposed to say. So yeah, I really appreciate her, and also thank you for having me today and tonight. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Miss Anita. Actually, the pleasure is ours for us to have you tonight. Mr. Dube, kindly give us your last parting shots. Mr. Dube, are you still there? Okay, I think Mr. Dube's network is a bit disturbing, and from us today, the theme was power. It was power, pressure, principles, and how to stay ethical even when it is hard. We've heard from our speakers, and they've given us some beautiful and wonderful insights, and they've shared their wisdom. We've seen how to stay integrous. We've seen the values that we are supposed to cultivate. We've seen the structures or the habits, and one of the things that our speakers have highlighted most is knowing when to say no and what to say no to. And they keep saying that you should be able to say no if you don't believe in something. And one of the things that that stood out for me is when Miss Esther said that we need to define our values, we need to know them and define them, but also be able to commit to them. And she said we need to underline the word commit. So, Mr. Dube, are you able to speak now so you can give us your parting shots? Okay, I think Mr. Dube, but is not is still having trouble with his internet, but it was an honor and a pleasure to have you all. Miss Esther Bonyonga from Malawi, Miss Jiramata Anita from Rwanda, and Mr. Wiseman Dube from South Africa. Thank you so much on behalf of African Young Leaders Foundation. I would like to thank you for taking your time to come and be with us and share with us your knowledge and your insights and wisdom, and with the young people out there. Thank you so much to our audience who are always here on YouTube Live following us. Thank you so much to every young leader who chooses integrity over convenience. As we close, I would like to leave you with 3 reflections from tonight's conversation: that power will test you, pressure will shape you, but your principles will save you. Thank you so much, everyone. Until next time, thank you. Have a good evening.